Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the sport where we're, we're finally going to sort out this heavyweight nonsense once and for all. And we're going to do it at a time when I don't think anyone cares anymore. Now, what we can say is we're going to get a fight for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. This was an event that historically would have had everyone in every city and every town across the world talking. You know, where there weren't TVs, people would huddle around radios. Maybe in the modern age, you'd be huddling over a phone. But you'd be finding a way by hook or by crook to watch Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury in a bygone age. We're not in that age. And this is literally a big event for boxing fans. It's not a global event. It doesn't feel like a global event. It hasn't had the coverage of a global event. And you've had everything, right? You've had the Brit overcoming supposedly mental health. You've got Usyk fighting at a time when Ukraine are getting cooked on the battlefield, and essentially that front line is becoming a meat grinder for Ukrainians. And whatever your views on the politics of this, like, you know, when Usyk steps in that ring, a nation does need him to help elevate their self-esteem. But with all these kind of elements woven into a fight between two men that hold versions of the heavyweight title, the world doesn't care. No, the world doesn't care. We live in a news age now where the biggest thing you're going to see in terms of combat is the video of P. Diddy dragging Cassie away from an elevator. And that's going to do more numbers, it's going to do more reach, it's going to do more in general than Fury versus Usyk. And when you just dig that layer down, you realize how lazy promoters are. The paradox is this. I don't know if anyone remembers. There was always this debate about should fighters sell tickets or not. And promoters would always say, if a fighter doesn't have to sell tickets, he has no incentive to promote the fight. He becomes lazy, and the only person who suffers is the promoter. Yeah? And they always did that from that perspective of we're the hardest working people in the sport. And then you realize when they don't have to bankroll an event, they don't do anything. Frank's been pretty much quiet in the whole build up to this. Eddie's been quiet. They haven't put the work in. And they just let poor old Turkey just, as Eddie would say, do his conkers. This guy's burnt through all this cash for an event that I don't think any of the marketing budget did anything to sell an additional pay-per-view, to do anything. And so here we are in this fight that the promoters kind of care about but don't really care about because they've got their money. The fighters care about, but they've got their money. They're good. No one is stressing out about ticket sales, PPV sales, nothing. In contrast, we've got these TV companies charging 25 quid. They're charging 25 quid for a show that they are only streaming. Right? They are just streaming this. It's not like, remember in the old days when Eddie would tell us Sky charged 15 quid for a pay-per-view because without that money, they couldn't put the show on. That's what they said to us. Not that they couldn't buy the show in. They couldn't put the show on. Now, maybe Sky paid a licensing fee on this one for, let's say, 5 million, being generous. They're selling these things at 25 quid a pop. They do 200,000 pay-per-views and they're good. Remember, there's no one. They don't have to split this money. This is just straight prof. Everything they do over 5 million, straight prof for Sky. The fans are getting gouged on this. Don't be misled. You're getting gouged on this. We were happy to pay 25 quid, 30 quid, 40 quid for this fight were it to be in the UK. It's not in the UK. We don't have an opportunity to watch. We haven't had an opportunity to even participate in fight week. Can you imagine a fight week between Usyk and Fury in the UK? Whatever you want to say about British fans, and we're a fractured country at the moment, so we all have different views, but we show out. When the greats show up, we show out. And in that time, we would have happily paid, but we're being gouged here. So when people say you better pay for this or we won't get the big fights, it's not true. You know what I mean? This is being funded by oil money. So you guys better rev your cars, man. I mean, go and get that 4-litre twin turbo. Don't worry, man. Like, you're paying for your boxing by doing it. That's your justification for pollution. I'm doing it for boxing. In what's been a relatively flat week in terms of fight week, I don't even think there's been a public workout of any note. We've just had the usual hangers on, the gad, all these kind of parasites, boxing's parasites, all floating around, taking pictures, smiling, all kind of funded by someone. No, it's definitely not out of their own pocket. That's why they smile so hard. And we've had all of that nonsense. And really, all we've had to talk about this week is Big John Fury headbutting a 12-year-old. And it's weird, isn't it, that most people would quite like to see the back end of John. You'd love to see the back end of John because he's so bad for the sport. Just when you think boxing can get its act together and look professional, and look focused, and look like a product that big brands would want to engage in, you got John Fury just acting like a wild man. And it doesn't seem anyone can control him. But I think they had to have a conversation with him and say, look, if you want to leave this country, you want to behave yourself. You're messing up the optics, the mise en scène of the event decided to try to put on. And so it's been a very subdued fight week. Now, there's a little scuffle at the weigh-in, wasn't there? But that's one of those really weird things. And this is why they shouldn't have so many people on that stage. I don't understand what the hell everyone's doing on that damn stage. Like, what? There should be 4 people on that stage, right? Fury and someone from his camp, Usyk and someone from his camp. That is all that's needed at a weigh-in. All those other people just caused trouble. And you saw it because the tension was so high. Someone's clearly come around the back to try and get a better look, slipped, grabbed the cameraman, pulled the cameraman down. Then people have thought, oh, it's kicking off, when it wasn't kicking off. And then it's just gone crazy. The sport can be a joke sometimes. But we're going to get to the fight now, it seems, unless someone slips in the shower. We're going to get to the fight. And 24 hours from now, there'll be an undisputed heavyweight champion. And here's one thing I can guarantee above all else. You will feel no different than you do today, yesterday, next week. You'll feel it won't change your life in any meaningful way. It won't resolve anything. It won't put debates to bed. It won't silence anything. It'll just be this really empty moment of, they fought. Yeah, he won. Move on. Our only hope is that we get a fight that's so decisive we don't get a replay of this. Because deep down, I don't think we care anymore. As the fan base of boxing shrinks and the average age goes up, we're becoming an irrelevance socially. We're becoming an anachronism. Professional boxing is kind of the backseat driver now. White collar's doing its thing. The Misfits guys are doing their thing. Bare Knuckles doing its thing. MMA is doing its thing. And you just got boxing in the back just injecting itself with heroin in the hope that it overdoses, it would seem. And I don't know how you fix it. Quite frankly, I don't care anymore. I think the way these guys have twerked, the way they've just grabbed their ankles, gaffer taped their wrists to their ankles and just allowed the Middle East to do what it wants. You can't respect them as men. You can't respect them as promoters. You can't respect them as boxing people. It's hard. It's hard. I'm not against getting foreign investment in. I just think some of the stuff that's happened has been unedifying. And yes, it may help your in-year revenue and your in-year profit, but it's not going to help the sport in the long run. Boxing's a dying sport, and at a time when the sport's dying, the supposed leaders of the sport, the promoters, your Mauricio Suleimans and Gilberto Mendozas and all these people, at a time when the sport is dying and it needs help and leadership and visionary optimism, they're cashing out, getting the Pope to bless belts and all sorts of stupid nonsense. What the hell is that? It's sad, but like I said, we're going to get a fight, and what people really care about is what's going to happen in that fight. I'm going to keep this bit quick in terms of my views on the actual fight itself, because quite frankly, it's Saturday, you lot have got stuff to be getting on with and you don't need me droning on. So I'm going to try and be as brief and to the point as possible. I think this really comes down to one question. How much does each man have left in them? Let's be very, very clear about this. We can talk about Usyk having never been put down or dropped or knocked out in his pro career. Okay, fine. Let's just, even if we accept that body he's got has taken a lot of punishment. He's not Superman. He's not made of vibranium. Do you know what I mean? He is human. So all those camps and the beatings he's taken from men who are naturally bigger than he is, we'll talk about the weight in a second, but it's no coincidence he's coming bigger because he needs to take more. And so we come back to this old boxing maximum. Everything's about your trade-offs. Are you willing to trade off a bit of speed and activity for a bit of durability and resistance? In Usyk's case, it would seem yes. It's also an admission that you can't just shift the weight like you did in your 20s or your early 30s. Life catches up with you. Now, while there may be no testing, what we know for absolute certain is Father Time is undefeated. So that question goes on the Usyk side. How much has he got left? And we'll come on to that in more detail. Then you look at Fury and you see how many times Fury's been put down and he's had wars with Wilder and he's had to go to the trenches. And in many ways, I think him fighting Dalboy and him fighting Dillian was a chance for his body to heal up again because those weren't wars. So he should have rejuvenated. But then he got dropped by Ngannou, who he didn't take seriously. But I think even had he taken him seriously, there was a risk that would happen because Fury's known for that. But what we can say is the guy that fought a Ukrainian last time, November 2015, that's not the same Fury. His legs don't respond the same way. His reflexes aren't the same. His approach to fights is no longer the same. So we're now looking at these two men as they approach an aggregate age of, we'll just say 75, 76. What's really left in the tank? What have they got left? Have they got that one last performance, think Duran versus Iran Barkley? Do they have that where they can go into themselves and say, for one night, for one last night, I'm going to be great? And when I hear people talk about the fight, the mistake they make is they're comparing previous versions of these two men. And they're comparing an imperious version of Usyk that they've seen and said, this man is incredible, with a similar version of Fury. Those two men no longer exist anywhere on this planet. They don't even exist in their own consciousness. What you have instead are two men rapidly approaching 40. Scarred in many ways by different things, wars, politics, life, drugs, whatever. And so the real question is, what has each man got left in this fight? I can't see it stretching out to 2 rounds. I can't see it to 2 fights, and I can't see it stretching out to that 24 rounds. Because so much has come out of these two men already that I don't think there's that much left for 2 fights. And so we go to the tactics board and we look at Team Usyk and what are they looking at in Fury? They're looking at vulnerabilities in Fury. He's vulnerable to smaller guys, but everyone he fights is generally smaller than him. But I mean, he's vulnerable to those smaller guys. The more mobile fighters, Steve Cunningham gave him trouble. To an extent, Tom Schwartz gave him trouble. And we know Otto Wallin did. But Otto Wallin more with his work rate and mobility. Let us never forget the trouble that Fury was in against a tenacious and aggressive Wallin. A Wallin who, for the record, we never saw against Anthony Joshua, which was weird. But Usyk's camp can take comfort from a lot of things that happened in that fight. Number one, he struggled to land headshots on a 6'6" guy. So he's going to struggle even more on a 6'4" guy. And Usyk knows how to move his head out the way. And because Fury tends to sweep and he tends to commit to those shots, he leaves himself open to counters. If Usyk can read those, then he can come over the top with a right hand, or he can come underneath with a left uppercut, for example. I think that part of it on the tactics board, I'm looking at that. I really want to tempt Fury to go for the head. I'm baiting him towards headshots, knowing that I've got more chance of avoiding those than I have of the body. So there's going to be a whole game of misdirection. Don't go to the body. Look, the head's right here. You almost want to draw him into those headshots and then rely on your reflexes to get out the way. If you add to that, Fury's weird desire to not keep it long against someone smaller, like when he was against Wilder. He doesn't seem to have nailed southpaws. He seems to have a hard time against southpaws, and that should give Team Usyk joy. The work rate troubled Fury. I think, combination punching is going to be a nightmare for him. He doesn't like it, and people aren't buying that. That kind of jittery, faint thing that he keeps doing. And Wilder bought it because Wilder's not really a lifelong boxer, but more experienced guys don't buy it. They almost use it as a trigger point to jump on him because that's when he's not, 100% confident in what he's doing. So when you're looking at that Usyk tactics board, you're trying to get back to, high activity, punching in combinations. You don't necessarily have to force the pace against Fury. Fury's not a high activity guy, so you don't have to go hell for leather in the first 4 rounds, as Usyk has tended to do against heavyweights. Fury's quite tenacious. He tends to do the 12 relatively easily, so you're not going to drain the gas tank of Tyson Fury. So why bother risking that at the expense of your own stamina, especially as you're coming in heavier? So it's that work rate and the activity levels that have to be high in this fight. And then in terms of key shots you're trying to land, I'm looking at that straight left to Fury's body every time. Straight left to Fury's body, get him thinking there. Then that sweeping left hook, that's always going to be there. If you can get to Fury's chin, we know it's vulnerable. And once you've sort of fed that in, then you start to feed the right hooks in. When you've got him thinking about his right-hand side, start attacking the left, and then come down to the body. And keep doing that until he feels suitably uncomfortable. And that's how Usyk's got to do it. I don't know if it's going to be a stoppage win for Usyk. I think what Usyk should be trying to do is just sweep up those rounds. You're trying to win the first 4 rounds and have Fury under pressure. And then you want to win a few more and have Fury needing a knockout or knockdown to try and get any kind of traction in the fight. Then you can kind of not coast, but then the work rate doesn't have to be as intense towards the second half of the fight. So they're the key things I'd be saying for a boxer like Usyk, is just to say, look, keep it really simple, man. Zero in on what's made you good. Number one, you're confident against bigger guys. Bigger guys have never intimidated you. You came up from middleweight, so this is nothing new. Yeah, bring that high activity combination punching approach with you. Fury's going to give you openings. He's, based on what we've seen Fury do, he's going to give you those openings and he's going to be vulnerable. This isn't a guy who's going to outwork you. Not at 18 stone something. He shouldn't outwork you. And then obviously Usyk would bring out all the tricks and be looking for that right hand side angle to get his shots off. And that's really Usyk 101. Like you've just got to chip away at every facet of Tyson Fury and just show that you're better than him at all of that. Psychologically, just let him know he's in there with someone who can do everything he can do at a higher level. And then hopefully you start to break him down that way, and then the punches will do what they need to do. That's really how I see the Usyk tactics board. Now, if you flip it to the other side and you say, right, we're in Team Fury's room and we're on his tactics board, what's the first thing you write on there? Number one, I'm going to write, he ain't what he used to be. Yeah, he's not what he used to be. We've seen it from Joshua 1, Joshua 2, Dubois. We've seen it. I'd even say with Del Boy. If we look at the Chisora fight, we saw that Usyk can get beaten up. And you see, when he gets beaten up, he shells up a lot. So the elbows come together and the body's there. And he doesn't like it to the body. Now, can Fury find those situations where he gets Usyk to bring those elbows together? Because to do that's going to mean a lot of kind of bent arm shots. You have to come around the corner a few times before you get him, to really bring those elbows together. And then you just shoot the straight shots down the middle and then come back around the outside. So, Fury's have to be creative with his combinations. You're not going to beat Usyk on single shots. You can see those coming all day. So you don't want single shots. You also want to really master positioning. So number 2 on that list is, do not let Usyk drift to his right under any circumstances. If you've got to throw that sweeping kind of jab hook thing you throw, do that. But do not let him escape that way. If you kind of look when Usyk has, I don't want to say struggle, but when the fights have been more competitive, it's when Joshua, Chisora, and Dubois have kept Usyk between the width of their shoulders. because then they had more options and they didn't give him the kind of dominant position. The times when Usyk has had it easy would be when he's able to escape out to that right-hand side. A lot of the stuff is easier said than done. But if Fury can't dictate the position, like Teofimo did against Loma, like Haney did against Loma, if you can't dictate that initial positioning and say, you're not going to go that way, so I'm going to have you fight on your nominally weaker side, more openings will appear for Fury that way. I'd also say ignore the Usyk head. Don't, like a bad prostitute, ignore the head. Just focus on smashing the collarbones. The collarbones, the shoulder joint, all of that. If you focus on smashing that, you're going to catch the head. I'd put all my punches, that bit where the collarbone and the breastbone joint would be, where all my punches would go, and I'd keep punching there, and it's painful, by the way. Yeah, you feel that in a fight. And that's what I'd be trying to do in Fury's position. Head hunting, he doesn't need to. He's big enough and he's strong enough. For that first half of the fight, he can just hit flesh. Knock Usyk about with his strength and his power, move him around. Never let him settle. Never let him get into that kind of bouncy rhythm where he can kind of skip out to his right. Anytime you see him skip out to his right, you skip out to your right and go, all right, let's dance. Really turn it into a dance in a way that I wish Joshua had done in that second fight. Even in the first fight. If he'd been able to just, as soon as Usyk goes right, he goes back into his right. Just frustrate him for a bit and go, you want to play around with distance? So do I. I think that's going to be important. So we've talked about that kind of psychology, the positioning, that geography of the ring. And now, we're into that kind of geometry of just making sure you don't give up easy angles. Because Usyk will look for those easy angles. And so you've got to make sure you do that. And then that gives you the platform to be Tyson Fury. To be a guy that can throw a versatile range of punches. I think one of the sad things we've seen in the Sugar Hill version of Fury is how restricted the punch making has been. It's mainly been 1-2s, that sweeping left, and a few right uppercuts, but we haven't seen him go right hook, right uppercut. We haven't seen him go right hook, straight right. Like, those are the shots Usyk can't read because no one really throws those at him. And if he can do that, if he can throw unconventional heavyweight combinations, he will give Usyk trouble. That's where Derek had joy for the first few rounds against Usyk. Derek threw stuff that you can't read. Like, Derek's he's as unorthodox as they come, and he was able to do that. And that's what you're looking for. And then the last thing is, where you can, make your weight count. When you're that much heavier, I think, what's the weight difference? About 30 pounds? I think on fight night, it'll be closer to 40 pounds. Once Fury's had a proper carb up, refeed, reload, he'll be about, in the ring, he'll be about 272, 273. And when he's that big, he just needs to lean on Usyk. Usyk moves out to the left, just drop your arm over him, give him that little kind of guillotine, just lean on him, push him back, let the referee break it up. Let him spend that much energy keeping you off. Double jab in, hold him, spin him, lean on him, push him in the corner and just lean on him, talk to him, just rub his ear. Just anything to be uncomfortable in there, just gnarly and nasty, I think, is what you need. And then when Usyk starts to slow down, and he will, when he gets to round 6, the work rate will drop off. Now you can start to think about, how do I just unleash hell on this guy? And if Fury can get to round 6 in a competitive position and he's throwing combinations, I think he can drown Usyk. Now, people say how? We're about to find out, but I think he can. That's what I'd have on the Fury tactics board. Now, in terms of the fight itself and the things that we talk about as fans, we have to dispel some rumors that Usyk's, he's this, he's that, oh my God, his work rate's insane. People don't even realize, right? Between Joshua 1 and Joshua 2, Usyk's work rate dropped by 25, probably 23%, if I'm just doing the numbers in my head, right? And then there's a similar drop from that to when he fought Daniel Dubois. In that case, it might have been closer to 30%. And so I went and looked at that and said, well, what does that actually mean? It means that to the untrained eye, Usyk's first round still looks the same. It still looks like that manic ball of energy where you're like, oh my God, look at the pace he's setting. But that first round has always been a trap, right? That first round has always been a trap. And he does it in the same way that a good personal trainer will make you do 20 burpees before you do any other exercise. Why? Because everything you do after that just feels hell. It feels like hell because you're tired and your legs are still burning from having done the burpees, and your cardiovascular system's going through the roof. So you actually feel the workout's harder than it is. And so that's why he does that thing in the first round. But what he's done progressively is do less of it and do it in bursts. And as people are starting to figure that out, and Dubois figured that out. So what Dubois did really well when he fought Usyk in the early rounds was not give Usyk what he wanted. Usyk wanted a big lump to kind of stand there and plod forward, and Dubois was more agile than Usyk had planned for. Right? More agile, could read fights better than Joshua, could jab better than Joshua, was better set up defensively, kept himself narrower, so the shots were harder for Usyk to find. And Dubois cagey, Dubois knows how to box, so he wasn't falling for the traps Joshua was. And obviously that incident in the 5th round changed Usyk's calculations, but Usyk started to realize, look, there's a chance this guy could hurt me. So I know he's vulnerable now. Let me take him out. So Usyk did what a good old man should do against a good young man. He ended the fight before he got exposed. But the fact that your work rate dropped off 28-29% between Joshua 2 and and Dubois, this is age. This is age. Usyk doesn't want to go the 12 at his age, but he has no choice because he's getting older. The strength isn't what it used to be. The speed's not what it used to be. So when you look at that decline in work rate, go back and watch it. You'll see it. Even within a fight, Usyk has always had a degradation in work rate where he starts off at that manic pace. By the time he gets to round 6 or 7, it's a bit more like normal, civilized pace. And then rounds 9 and 10, he's back down to what I call normal heavyweight work rate. So the challenge is, how do you get Usyk to burn all that energy so that you don't get all of this? You don't get that kind of flat curve. You can steepen the decline in that curve. That's going to be for Fury's team to decide, but it's definitely about using your jab, using your weight, using your legs. And it doesn't mean running around the ring. Sometimes it might mean the difference between your back leg sliding out straight behind you, on a clock that would be 6 o'clock, versus moving that back leg to like 4:30. Yeah? And that can change the whole dynamic of a fight. I mean, the way you're making it miss, then you're able to counter to the body, you can uppercut, all those options. And these things are all key, by the way. And then if you flip it around from an Usyk perspective, do you target the cut? Fury's vulnerable. He can be dropped. You got dropped by Ngannou. Ngannou, okay, he's heavier than Usyk, but does Ngannou punch harder than Usyk? I find that hard to believe. Like I've said many times, I don't believe MMA guys have that power like that. But we saw that against Joshua. So if you're Usyk, do you go after that cut? Fury's vulnerable. Do you go after the cut? I would. In his corner, I would. Yeah, I'd go after that cut. I'd go after all the vulnerabilities that were revealed by Otto Allen, that were revealed by Steve Cunningham, that were revealed by Deontay Wilder. Fury doesn't react well to speed. Both men have that in common. They love big, slow, lumbering oafs in front of them. That's when they look good. They struggle when they've got movers in front of them. The minute you stop moving against Usyk, you're a target. The minute you stop moving against Fury, you're a target. The minute you slide into the ropes against Fury, you're a target. The same with Usyk. So these two are kind of cut from that similar cloth, and that shows you the high skill level both men possess. But when we really break this down, and I've got to commit to a position, Fury's so big and so heavy, so long, that Usyk's going to have to work harder than he's ever worked before. Like, there are a lot of just tactical problems in getting to Fury that are going to be an issue. If Fury has a back leg that functions at all, if he can just slide backwards a couple of times, leave a couple of uppercuts in there, slide back, shuffle back, boom, just shoot one to the body, And as I said about the Bentley fight, if he can find that backhand to the body that goes from out to in, So from Fury's perspective, going from right to left, he could stop him with a body shot. But if Usyk gets Fury on the chin, it could be a wrap too. But my instincts are Fury wins this. Pedigree, size, strength, reach. Apart from work rate, I don't think there's an advantage Usyk has. Speed and work rate would be what Usyk has. Is that going to be enough against Fury? History's shown that it can be. But history also shows that when the stakes are high, the real Tyson Fury comes out. So let's see what happens when the stakes are up. I am going to back Fury. And I'm not going to sit here and go, well, I wouldn't be surprised if Usyk won. I would be surprised if Usyk won. I'd be disappointed if Usyk won. I don't think it would be necessarily great for boxing if Usyk won. But boxing is what it is. My colours to the mast. I think Fury wins this. And then hopefully these belts just get scattered and that's it. Like, I'm bored now. I am genuinely bored of it. You know, let's let a new generation do their thing. Like, it's all a bit played out now. And on that note, I did 30 minutes. Let me tap out and say, listen, enjoy the fight wherever you are. Get your beers in, get your snacks in, fruit juice if that's what you want, your smoothies. If you want to watch it with mates, watch it with mates. Let's try and just make it as good an event as we can. The promoters have let us down, but as fans, we shouldn't let ourselves down. So enjoy the fight. If I'm wrong on my prediction, I know you're going to tweet me and say, you were wrong. But enjoy the fight. I think, I can't tell you it's going to be a brilliant night. I quite frankly don't care. I'd just like us to move on in boxing. Let's start talking about another wave of fighters who will hopefully fight each other a lot sooner than these clowns have.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.